Hi, I'm Peter Marshall and I'm a psychologist, and this series of videos is designed to give you a rapid understanding of the basics of this subject. In this first module, you'll learn about approaches, models, theoretical constructs and theories in psychology. The 6 major approaches in psychology are the behaviourist, the psychoanalytical, the cognitive, humanist, social psychological and psychobiological approaches. Each of these makes a different assumption about where the cause of particular psychological phenomena lies, and they explain the effect logically from there. Let's start with the behaviourist approach. Behaviourists assume that psychological behaviour is learned by conditioning, that is, by making associations between behaviours and their consequences. If the consequences are rewarding, the behaviours will be repeated. If they're not, then they won't. It's not always that straightforward, however. For example, people sometimes repeat a particular behaviour even though they receive condemnation or some other punishment. This happens when individuals tend to be neglected. In such cases, condemnation is better than being ignored. Another example is the many cases where people escape one bad personal relationship only to take up with another partner of the same type. Some people also seem to shoot themselves in the foot, metaphorically speaking. They seem to take courses of action which have failed them before. They never seem to learn. This can be explained in terms of their being more comfortable with failure than success. They've learned how to deal with it. Success to them would be a negative consequence. Turning now to the psychoanalytical approach. Psychoanalysts assume that mental behaviour can all be explained in terms of psychic conflicts and attempts to protect the ego. From the day we're born, we seek to escape psychologically threatening situations. We've learned how painful is separation from those who are important to us, and each time it is threatened, explicitly or implicitly, we relive the remembered pain. We have learned that we receive their approval when we perform socially desirable behaviours, and their condemnation when we do the opposite. Consequently, we direct our behaviour in socially desirable ways to avoid the threat of rejection. Sometimes our overriding motivation to please or appease others to avoid rejection leads us to behave in a way that is untrue to ourselves. We may say we agree with something when we do not. We may say we like something that we do not like, or that we believe something when we actually don't. When we lie or be untruthful to ourselves, we suffer anxiety as a consequence. In addition, we fail to adapt fully to the conditions of life, for we have avoided facing up to something. Failure to adapt results in some degree of mental disorder. Sometimes the maladaptation is not merely a suppression, but a repression of a feeling. This is where a thought or feeling threatens us so much that we bury it deep in our unconscious, so that we're not even aware it is there. The challenge then is not only to face up to the adaptation, but to track down the hidden maladaptation in the first place. Let's now turn to the cognitive approach. Cognitive psychologists assume that all mental behaviour can be explained in terms of thinking. Human beings are assumed to be intelligent and goal-seeking. Sometimes, however, people's thinking is faulty, and so the consequences are failure or discomfort. Psychological disorders can, therefore, be remedied by discovering the faults in thinking and helping the individual to correct them. Then we have the humanist approach. Humanist psychologists assume that human beings have free will and are self-seeking. Their main goal is self-actualization. This means matching what they are and what they think they should be, given their qualities, skills and abilities. Psychological behaviour can thus be explained in this way. When individuals fail in this task, say the humanists, the result is mental disorder. The reasons for failure is often unrealistic beliefs about what they are and what they think they ought to be in the first place. Humanist therapies try to remedy the problem by helping people to be more realistic in this respect. So let's now turn to the social psychological approach. Social psychologists assume that psychological behaviour is socially determined. We behave as we do because others expect us to, or because we want to impress them in some way. If we're deprived of social affiliation, or it places demands upon us which are unrealistic or inconsistent with our personal beliefs or needs, symptoms of maladaptation will occur. Therapists from this school of thought see the remedies as coming from social situations. Their aims will be to help the individuals concerned to form more workable and appropriate relationships with others. And finally, we have the psychobiological approach. Psychobiologists assume that psychological behaviour is due to biological factors. When things go wrong, they assume the remedies lie in changing the physiological conditions. This can involve manipulating or modifying the biological structures. Alternatively, it can mean controlling, increasing, reducing or augmenting the brain chemical actions thought to be involved in the disordered behaviour. You'll often hear psychology writers talking about models. These are explanations which fit the facts. There's no implication that they're the correct explanations in any of the cases, though. If there is evidence to support them, they will be classed as theories. But that is the main difference between the two. Theories are supported by evidence in a proportion of cases. Do you believe that phobias are caused by psychic conflicts? Do you think they're learned by associations? Or do you think they're learned from watching other phobic people? Neither questions can be answered in a simple yes or no fashion. I'll try to explain why. Almost all psychological knowledge exists in the form of theories. So what is a theory? Well, a theory is an explanation which fits the facts and is supported by evidence in some cases. There are virtually no direct, tidy relationships between causes and effects. The best we can hope for are statistical correlations between phenomena. The closer to 1 the correlation, the greater the proportion of cases a theory can explain. The closer to 0, the smaller the proportion it can explain. Consequently, theories can be classified as strong or weak. Strong theories can be used for prediction. For this, the correlation needs to be greater than 0.7. Even that figure means that only 49% of the two things that correlate are one and the same thing. You take the square of the correlation to find this. 0.7 times 0.7 equals 0.49 overlapping elements. If the correlation is 0.7 or less, there will be more chance that the theory will not explain or predict the particular case than that it will. The second reason why we find more than one theory to explain a particular phenomena is that different theories can explain the same thing if their levels of abstraction are different. For example, observation and learning from exposure to television violence may explain aggression at a social psychological level. It does not, however, explain it at a psychobiological level. In the latter case, we need to explain it in terms of physiological structures and neurochemicals. Thirdly, why should we expect only one condition to be capable of causing a particular kind of behaviour or mental state? More than one thing can make a house fall down, the ground can subside, a lorry can crash into it, beetle infestation or rot can destroy its timbers, or it can collapse inwards after being gutted by fire. These things cannot be traced back to a single root cause, yet they all have the same end results. Why then should we expect a psychological condition to be explainable by a single unambiguous cause? Not only might there be different factors that can bring about the same effect, but more than one might be at work at the same time. Consequently, attending to one cause in treating a mental disorder might help, but not totally cure the illness. If explanations of causes are supported by proof in all cases, they will be classed as laws, but you don't get many of these in psychology. Evidence of a simple relationship between two variables is not enough for a theory, though. To be classed as a theory, an explanation must contain two or more interrelated propositions supported by evidence. These simple relationships, supported by evidence, are known as theoretical constructs. You can obtain a fuller treatment of the nature of psychological knowledge and the ways in which it's generated from my book entitled Research Methods. So to sum up, the main approaches to explaining psychological phenomena are the behaviourist, the psychoanalytical, the cognitive, the humanist, the social psychological, and the biological approaches. Models are unproven explanations that fit the facts. Theoretical constructs are simple propositions about relationships between two variables. Two or more of these supported by evidence explaining psychological phenomena in some cases amount to a theory. Theories may be strong or weak according to the proportion of cases they explain. Explanations that apply to every case are known as laws. I'm Dr. Peter Marshall, author of Introduction to Psychology. I hope you found this video helpful and that you'll join me for the next module in this series, which will focus on attention. Full information on all of my books and publications can be found on my website, drpetermarshall.com. You can also access my many articles and advice designed to help you in your career by following me on LinkedIn by using the link linkedin.in/Dr. Peter Marshall, and the story of my own professional development in weekly installments by following me on facebook.com/drpeter.marshall.35.